Amy Mitchell floated in the pilot seat of the Dawn Runner and watched Jupiter grow larger through the front window. The massive planet looked peaceful from this distance, with its swirling red and brown clouds. She had dreamed of this moment since joining the Space Academy 3 years ago. Her first real mission beyond Earth orbit, Captain Lisa Turner, sat in the command chair behind her. The older woman had 20 years of experience in deep space operations. Amy felt honored to serve under such a respected officer, even if this was just a routine patrol mission. The Dawn Runner was a small reconnaissance vessel designed for long-range missions. It carried advanced sensors and communication equipment, but very few weapons. Their job was to watch and report, not to fight. Amy checked their position on the navigation display. They were exactly where command had ordered them to be. Lisa stood up and walked to the sensor station. She frowned at the readings on her screen. Amy noticed the change in her captain's expression and turned around. "What is it, Captain?" Lisa did not answer immediately. She pressed several buttons, and the main display showed a 3-dimensional map of their surrounding space. Small red dots appeared and disappeared at the edge of their sensor range. "Contact Control, and tell them we have multiple unknown signatures near our position." Lisa's voice carried a tension that made Amy's stomach tighten. Amy opened the communication channel and began transmitting their report to Earth. The signal would take over an hour to reach home base. If something was wrong, they would be on their own for quite some time. The red dots on the display suddenly multiplied. What had been 5 or 6 unknown contacts became dozens. They appeared all around the Dawn Runner, like they had been hiding, and just decided to show themselves. "Captain, those signatures are getting stronger." Amy's training kicked in and she began recording everything the sensors detected. Whatever was happening, they needed to gather as much information as possible. Lisa moved back to her command chair and activated the ship's emergency protocols. Red lights began flashing throughout the small bridge. The computer's voice announced that they were now in combat readiness mode. Amy had practiced this scenario hundreds of times in the simulator, but reality felt completely different. Her hands moved across the control panel with trained precision, while her mind raced with possibilities. Pirates were rare in this part of space, and no Earth ships were scheduled to be in the area. The unknown contacts began moving toward them with impossible speed. Amy watched the display in amazement as the objects accelerated far beyond what any known human technology could achieve. These were not Earth vessels, and they were definitely not pirates using stolen equipment. "Captain, I think we need to leave this area immediately." Amy's voice remained steady, despite the fear growing inside her chest. Lisa was already working on that problem. She had activated the Dawn Runner's jump drive and was calculating their escape route back toward Earth. The small ship needed several minutes to charge its engines for a long-distance jump. The unknown vessels continued to close the distance between them. Amy estimated they would be within weapons range in less than 5 minutes. She had no idea what kind of weapons these strangers might have, but she doubted the Dawn Runner's light shields could protect them from advanced alien technology. Amy tried to make contact with the approaching ships, using every communication frequency in their database. She broadcast messages in dozens of human languages, and even tried mathematical sequences that might be understood by any intelligent species. No response came back through the void of space. The jump drive reached 50% charge. Lisa watched the countdown timer and calculated whether they would have enough time to escape. The unknown vessels were still accelerating and would reach them before the drive finished charging. "Captain, we have incoming energy signatures." Amy's sensors detected powerful beams of electromagnetic energy racing toward their small ship. Lisa immediately threw the Dawn Runner into evasive maneuvers. The little vessel twisted and rolled through space as the energy beams passed close by. Amy felt her stomach lurch as the artificial gravity struggled to compensate for their wild movements. More energy beams followed the first ones. These were closer, and Amy could see the space around them lighting up with strange blue and purple colors. Whatever technology their attackers were using, it was far beyond anything Earth had developed. The jump drive reached 70% charge. Lisa continued her evasive flying, while Amy tried to get a better scan of their attackers. The sensor readings made no sense. The unknown ships seemed to be built from materials that barely showed up on their instruments. A brilliant flash filled the bridge windows and every system on the Dawn Runner went dark. Emergency lighting came on a few seconds later, but all the control panels remained blank. Amy tried to restart their systems, but nothing responded to her commands. "We have been hit by some kind of electromagnetic pulse." Amy reported what she already knew her captain could see for herself. Lisa tried the manual controls, but even those had been disabled. The Dawn Runner drifted helplessly through space, while the unknown vessels approached. Amy could see them now through the bridge windows. They were sleek and graceful, with a design unlike anything humans had ever built. The largest of the alien ships extended what looked like a docking tube toward the Dawn Runner. Amy realized their attackers planned to board them rather than simply destroy their vessel. She did not know if this was good news or bad news. Lisa drew her sidearm and motioned for Amy to do the same. They both knew their small weapons would be useless against any species advanced enough to disable their ships so easily, but military training demanded they try to resist. The alien docking tube connected to their airlock with a soft vibrating sound that Amy felt through the floor. She heard mechanical noises as the aliens cut through their outer door. Whatever tools they were using worked much faster than human cutting equipment. The inner airlock door opened, and 3 figures stepped onto the Dawn Runner. Amy had imagined what aliens might look like many times, but reality surprised her completely. The beings were tall and graceful, with silver blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the emergency lighting. They had 4 arms and moved with fluid motions that reminded her of dancers. The lead alien raised one of its hands and spoke in perfect English. "Please do not resist. We mean you no permanent harm." Lisa kept her weapon pointed at the speaker, while Amy tried to understand how these beings had learned human language. The alien's voice was melodious and calm without any trace of threat or anger. "We are representatives of the Velkari Coalition. Your species has been selected for integration into our community of worlds." The alien's second set of arms gestured, in what might have been a peaceful greeting. Amy felt her world shift as the implications of those words sank into her mind. These beings were not just exploring or making contact. They were here to conquer Earth, and they spoke about it like it was a routine business transaction. Lisa fired her weapon at the lead alien. The energy bolt struck some kind of invisible barrier around the creature and dissipated harmlessly. The alien looked sad rather than angry at this display of human aggression. "Your resistance is understandable, but futile. Please surrender your weapons, and we will escort you to our vessel for processing." The alien's tone remained gentle despite Lisa's attack. More aliens entered the Dawn Runner, carrying devices that looked like advanced stun weapons. Amy realized they were completely outmatched, and any further resistance would only result in them being knocked unconscious. She slowly placed her weapon on the floor and raised her hands. Lisa looked at her with disappointment, but followed Amy's example. The aliens collected their weapons and gestured toward the airlock. Amy took one last look around the bridge of the Dawn Runner before walking toward what she assumed would be her death. The alien ship was unlike anything Amy had ever seen. The corridors were wide and filled with soft lighting that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Everything was clean and organic, looking as if the ship had been grown rather than built. They were escorted to a comfortable room, with furniture that adjusted to their human proportions. Amy sat down on what felt like the most comfortable chair she had ever experienced. The aliens had not restrained them or treated them roughly. She began to wonder if these creatures really meant them no harm. The lead alien introduced itself as Commander Zarathal. It explained that Amy and Lisa were now guests aboard the vessel Serenity's Edge. They would be well cared for, while the coalition completed its preparation for Earth's integration. Amy listened to these words and felt her heart sink. Earth had no idea these aliens existed and would be completely unprepared for an invasion. She wondered how many people would die when the coalition decided to integrate her home world into their empire of stars. Amy woke up in a room that felt more like a luxury hotel than a prison cell. The bed was incredibly comfortable, and the walls showed peaceful scenes of alien landscapes with purple skies and floating mountains. She had no idea how long she had been sleeping, but felt completely rested. A soft chime indicated someone wanted to enter her room. Amy sat up and called out that they could come in. The door slid open silently, and a new alien walked inside. This one was smaller than Commander Zarathal, with glowing patterns on its skin that pulsed gently like a slow heartbeat. "Good morning, Amy Mitchell. I am Dr. Nixara, and I will be conducting your evaluation today." The alien's voice was softer and more musical than the commander's had been. Amy stood up and looked around the room for any sign of Captain Turner. She had not seen Lisa since they were brought aboard the alien ship and was beginning to worry about her commanding officer's safety. "Where's Captain Turner?" Amy tried to keep her voice calm, but could not hide her concern for her friend and mentor. Dr. Nixara moved to a chair that formed itself from the floor and gestured for Amy to sit across from her. "Your captain is being evaluated by another member of our team. She is perfectly safe and will join you later if circumstances permit." Amy did not like the sound of that last part, but decided not to push the issue yet. She needed to learn more about these aliens and their plans before she could figure out how to help Lisa or warn Earth about the coming invasion. Dr. Nixara touched a device on her wrist, and the walls of the room changed to show holographic displays of Earth. Amy could see her home planet rotating slowly with detailed images of major cities and military installations highlighted in different colors. "We have been observing your world for several months now. Your species shows great potential for successful integration into our coalition." Dr. Nixara spoke like she was discussing a science project rather than the conquest of an entire planet. Amy stared at the images of Earth and felt sick to her stomach. The aliens knew everything about human civilization, including the locations of military bases and government centers. Any resistance Earth might mount would be crushed before it could even begin. What does integration mean exactly? Amy needed to understand what these creatures planned to do to her people. Dr. Nixara smiled in a way that was probably meant to be reassuring, but only made Amy more nervous. Integration is a peaceful process, where a new species joins our coalition and benefits from our advanced technology and social systems. The holographic display changed to show other planets with different types of alien cities. Amy saw beings that looked like giant insects working alongside creatures that resembled walking plants. All of them appeared happy and prosperous in their alien environments. "We have successfully integrated 47 different species over the past 1,000 years. Each world has maintained its unique culture while gaining access to technologies that have eliminated poverty, disease, and war." Dr. Nixara gestured toward the peaceful scenes playing on the walls. Amy tried to process this information, but something felt wrong about the whole situation. If integration was so beneficial, why did they need to disable her ship and capture her crew? Why not simply make contact through normal diplomatic channels? If integration is so wonderful, why are you planning an invasion? Amy decided to ask the question directly rather than dancing around the issue. Dr. Nixara's glowing patterns flickered in what might have been surprise or amusement. "Invasion is such a harsh word. We prefer to call it rapid integration. Experience has taught us that gradual contact often leads to unnecessary conflict and suffering." The alien touched her device again, and the display showed historical records of previous integrations. Amy watched as coalition fleets arrived at different worlds and quickly overwhelmed any military resistance. In every case, the conquered species seemed to accept their new situation. Within a few years, Most species initially resist change, even when that change will benefit them greatly. Dr. Nixera spoke like a teacher, explaining a simple concept to a confused student. Rapid integration minimizes casualties and allows us to begin improving conditions. Immediately, Amy studied the records more carefully and noticed something disturbing. In every case, the coalition had faced only primitive opposition. Chemical rockets and nuclear weapons seemed to be the most advanced technology any of the conquered worlds had possessed. What kind of resistance did you encounter from these other species? Amy pointed to one of the historical displays showing a world with red oceans and silver cities. Very little, actually. Most species surrender once they realize the futility of fighting our superior technology. Dr. Nixera seemed proud of how efficiently the coalition had expanded across the galaxy. Amy began to understand why these aliens felt so confident about conquering Earth. Every previous integration had followed the same pattern. The coalition would arrive with overwhelming force, and the native species would quickly realize they could not win a conventional war. But humans might not follow that same pattern. Amy knew her species had a reputation for being stubborn and unpredictable. She wondered if the coalition had encountered anything like human psychology before. Tell me about Earth's military capabilities. Dr. Nixara's tone became more businesslike as she moved to the actual purpose of their meeting. Amy knew she was in an impossible situation. If she told the truth, she might help the aliens plan a more effective invasion. If she lied, they would probably detect her deception and might hurt Captain Turner or other prisoners. She decided to answer honestly but carefully. Earth has nuclear weapons and various conventional military forces. Our technology is probably similar to what you have seen from other species in your records. Dr. Nixera nodded and made notes on her device. The holographic display zoomed in to show detailed images of Earth's major military installations. Amy was amazed by the level of detail the aliens had gathered during their months of observation. We have identified approximately 50,000 military installations of various sizes across your planet. Most appear to be equipped with chemical explosive weapons and primitive aircraft. Dr. Nixera spoke like she was reading from a technical manual. Amy watched as the display highlighted submarine bases and missile silos around the world. The aliens seemed to know about every major weapon system Earth possessed, including the secret installations that most humans did not even know existed. Your nuclear weapons are more advanced than what we usually encounter, but still pose no significant threat to our fleet. Dr. Nixera showed Amy images of coalition ships that looked powerful enough to survive anything Earth could throw at them. The interrogation continued for several hours, as Dr. Nixera asked detailed questions about Earth's population centers and government structures. Amy answered as best she could, while trying to avoid giving information that might help the aliens target civilian areas. What surprised Amy was how much the coalition already knew about human society. They had intercepted television broadcasts and internet communications for months. Dr. Nixera could quote human movies and seemed to understand Earth's various political systems better than many humans did. Your species appears to have significant potential for technological advancement, once proper guidance is provided. Dr. Nixera reviewed her notes, while Amy tried to figure out what that statement really meant. As the session was ending, Amy decided to ask a question that had been bothering her since she woke up. If you already know so much about Earth, why do you need to question me at all, Doctor? Nixera's glowing patterns shifted to a different color before she answered. We have encountered some unusual behavioral patterns in your species that do not match our predictions based on the other 47 integrated worlds. Amy felt a small spark of hope at those words. Maybe humans were different enough to cause problems for the coalition's carefully planned invasion. Maybe her people had characteristics that these aliens did not understand or expect. What kind of unusual patterns? Amy tried to keep her voice casual but could not hide her curiosity about what had confused these advanced beings. Dr. Nixera touched her device and the walls went blank. We will discuss that tomorrow. For now you should rest and prepare for more detailed questioning about human psychology and motivation. Amy was escorted back to her comfortable prison cell with more questions than answers. She lay on the alien bed and stared at the peaceful landscapes on the walls while her mind raced with possibilities. Somewhere in human nature was something that worried the Coalition enough to require special investigation. She fell asleep wondering what aspects of humanity might be alien enough to surprise beings who had conquered 47 different worlds. Amy was brought to a different room on the second day. This one had a large window that showed Earth hanging in space like a blue and white marble. The sight of her home planet made her chest tight with worry and homesickness. Somewhere down there, people were going about their normal lives with no idea that an alien fleet was preparing to change everything. Dr. Nixara entered the room, followed by Commander Zeroth. Both aliens seemed more serious than they had been during previous conversations. They sat across from Amy at a table that had grown from the floor, just like the furniture in her cell. "We need your help understanding some inconsistencies in our data about human behavior." Dr. Nixara activated her device, and the walls began showing scenes from Earth that the aliens had recorded during their months of observation. Amy watched footage of humans doing normal everyday activities, people walking to work, riding buses, and playing in parks. Everything looked peaceful and ordinary, exactly like what the Coalition would expect to see before an integration. Commander Zeratho gestured toward the displays with one of her 4 arms. "According to our analysis, your species should respond to superior force in the same way as all previous integrated worlds. But our models predict significant resistance that does not follow logical patterns." Amy studied the aliens' faces and realized they were genuinely confused about something they had observed. This might be the opportunity she had been hoping for to make them reconsider their plans for Earth. "What kind of resistance patterns are you seeing?" Amy tried to sound helpful rather than eager as she asked the question. Dr. Nixara touched her device and the displays changed to show human military exercises and combat training. Amy saw soldiers practicing urban warfare and special forces units, learning to operate behind enemy lines. Your military forces train extensively for scenarios involving technologically superior opponents. Most species focus their military planning on fighting enemies with similar capabilities. Dr. Nixara paused the footage on an image of soldiers learning to fight in destroyed cities. Commander Zarathal leaned forward in her chair. "More troubling are the civilian preparations we have observed. Your people practice surviving natural disasters and societal collapse with an enthusiasm that seems excessive for practical purposes." Amy almost smiled at the aliens' confusion about human preparedness culture. They had apparently discovered doomsday preppers and survivalist communities without understanding the mindset behind those activities. "We need you to explain human psychology to us." Dr. Nixara's glowing patterns pulsed faster as she spoke. "Help us understand why your species behaves in ways that do not serve obvious survival benefits." Amy realized this was her chance to make the aliens understand that humans might not react to invasion the way they expected. She decided to start with simple examples and work toward more complex aspects of human nature. Humans do not always make decisions based on logical survival calculations. Amy looked out the window at erstwhile. She spoke. "We often act based on principles and emotions that might seem irrational to outside observers." Dr. Nixara made notes on her device. "Can you provide specific examples of this irrational behavior?" Amy thought about how to explain human nature to beings who had apparently never encountered anything like it before. She decided to start with something simple that might make sense. 2 rational alien minds. Humans climb mountains because they are there. Amy watched the aliens' expressions as she spoke. "We risk our lives to reach the top of dangerous peaks that offer no practical benefit. The only reward is the satisfaction of having accomplished something difficult." Commander Zarathel's forearms gestured in what Amy was beginning to recognize as confusion or surprise. But what evolutionary advantage does this behavior provide? How does risking death for no material gain help your species survive? It does not help us survive. Amy smiled as she saw the aliens struggle to understand this concept. We climb mountains because it makes us feel alive and proud of what we can accomplish. The risk is part of what makes the achievement meaningful. Dr. Nixara's glowing patterns shifted to a different color. This behavior serves no logical purpose, yet your species engages in it regularly. Are there other examples of such irrational activities? Ami warmed to her subject, as she realized how alien human motivation must seem to these logical creatures. Humans run into burning buildings to save people they have never met. We donate organs to strangers and volunteer to help in disaster zones. We adopt animals that serve no practical purpose, except to make us happy. The aliens exchanged glances that Amy interpreted as growing concern. Commander Zarathal asked the next question with obvious puzzlement in her voice. Why would your species risk harm to help individuals who provide no benefit to your genetic line or social group, because we believe it is the right thing to do? Amy tried to explain morality to beings who apparently thought only in terms of practical advantage. We help others because we want to live in a world where people help each other. Dr. Nixara made more notes while studying Amy's face carefully. This helping behavior extends beyond family groups and tribal affiliations. Your species shows concern for individuals with no genetic or social connection to yourselves. Amy nodded and continued her explanation. Humans create art during wars and compose music in prison camps. We write poetry when we are starving and paint pictures when our cities are being bombed. Beauty and creativity matter to us even when we are suffering. Commander Zarathal stood up and walked to the window, showing Earth. Her posture suggested she was disturbed by what she was hearing. Art and music do not provide tactical advantages during conflict. Why would your species waste energy on such activities when survival should be the only priority? Because survival without beauty and meaning is not really living. Amy joined the commander at the window and looked down at her home planet. Humans need more than just food and shelter to be happy. We need purpose and hope and things that make us feel like our lives matter. Dr. Nixara approached them at the window with her device in hand. You are describing a species that prioritizes abstract concepts over concrete survival benefits. This explains some of the unusual patterns we have observed in your military training. Amy sensed that the aliens were beginning to understand something important about human nature. She decided to push further and see how they would react to more complex examples of human behavior. Humans have pets that we love more than ourselves. Amy watched the aliens' faces as she delivered this information. We spend enormous amounts of money caring for animals that provide no practical benefit. When our pets die, we grieve for them like family members. Commander Zarathal turned away from the window to stare at Amy with all four of her eyes. Your species forms emotional attachments to other biological entities that consume resources without providing equivalent returns. This behavior should have been eliminated by natural selection, but it was not eliminated because loving our pets makes us happy. Amy could see that the aliens were struggling to process this concept. Humans do not make all our decisions based on practical calculations. We do things because they feel right or because they bring us joy. Dr. Nixara reviewed her notes with obvious agitation. The species we have previously integrated make decisions based on survival, advantage, and social hierarchy. Human behavior appears to follow completely different motivational patterns. Amy realized she had succeeded in making the aliens understand that humans might not behave the way their models predicted. Now she needed to help them understand what that might mean for their invasion plans. What happens when humans face impossible odds? Amy asked the question quietly while continuing to look at Earth through the window. Commander Zarathal responded immediately. Rational species surrender when resistance becomes futile. They calculate that survival under occupation is preferable to certain death in hopeless combat. Amy shook her head slowly. Humans sometimes fight harder when we know we cannot win. We have stories about battles where people fought to the last person rather than surrender. These defeats become inspiration for future generations. Dr. Nixara's glowing patterns began pulsing much faster. You are describing a species that chooses death over submission, even when submission would ensure survival. This behavior contradicts every model we have developed for predicting integration outcomes. Amy finally smiled as she watched understanding dawn in the aliens' strange eyes. Now they were beginning to grasp what made humans different from the other 47 species they had conquered. Now they might realize that invading Earth could be more complicated than they had planned. The third day brought Amy to the largest room she had seen on the alien ship. The walls were covered with holographic displays showing scenes from human history. She recognized images of wars and battles from different time periods and realized the aliens had been studying Earth's violent past. Commander Zarathal and Dr. Nixara were joined by several other Velkari, who introduced themselves as military analysts and behavioral specialists. Amy counted 8 aliens total, all focused on understanding the puzzle that humanity apparently represented to their invasion plans. We have reviewed your species' history of warfare and find it deeply troubling. Commander Zarathal activated a display showing footage from various human conflicts. Most integrated species have relatively brief periods of violent behavior before developing more civilized social structures. Amy watched scenes from World War II and Vietnam flash across the walls around her. The aliens had somehow obtained detailed records of human military history, including battles and strategies that most people on Earth had forgotten. Dr. Nixara gestured toward images of soldiers fighting in jungle and urban environments. Your species has developed an extensive knowledge of asymmetric warfare tactics. These techniques are designed specifically for fighting against technologically superior opponents. One of the military analysts stepped forward and introduced himself as General Kethron. His skin was darker than the others and covered with scars. That suggested he had experience with actual combat rather than just planning. We have conquered 47 worlds and never encountered a species that prepares so extensively for hopeless military situations. General Kethron showed Amy footage of human special forces training in extreme environments. Your soldiers learn to operate without supply lines and to fight as individuals when organized. Resistance becomes impossible. Amy felt a strange sense of pride as she watched the training footage. Humans had always been good at finding ways to fight against impossible odds. She was beginning to understand why the aliens seemed so concerned about their invasion plans. Every species eventually surrenders when faced with overwhelming force. Dr. Nixara pulled up records from previous integrations, showing brief conflicts that ended quickly once the native populations realized resistance was futile. Amy studied the alien records and noticed something important. All of the conquered species had fought conventional battles using organized military units. None of them had adapted to guerrilla warfare or developed the kind of irregular tactics that humans excelled at. What concerns you most about human military capabilities? Amy decided to ask directly, rather than trying to guess what was bothering the aliens. General Kethron answered without hesitation. Your species treats defeat as motivation for continued resistance, rather than as a signal to surrender. We have found records of battles where human forces fought to complete annihilation rather than accept occupation. The displays changed to show footage from the Battle of Thermopylae and the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Amy watched alien analysts trying to understand why humans would choose certain death over strategic retreat. These actions serve no logical military purpose. Commander Zarathal pointed to images of Spartan warriors fighting against impossible odds. The 300 soldiers could not possibly defeat the Persian army yet. They chose to die rather than withdraw, but their sacrifice inspired all of Greece to resist the invasion. Amy tried to explain the concept of martyrdom to beings who thought only in terms of immediate tactical advantage. Sometimes losing a battle can help you win a war. Dr. Nixera made notes while reviewing footage from other desperate last stands. Throughout human history, your species has a pattern of creating inspirational defeats that motivate future resistance. This behavior is completely unprecedented in our experience. Amy began to understand why the Valkyrie were so disturbed by human psychology. They had built their expansion strategy around the assumption that conquered species would behave rationally and accept occupation once resistance became futile. Human resistance movements often become stronger after suffering major defeats. Amy continued her explanation while watching the aliens' growing discomfort. We have a saying that you can kill a man, but you cannot kill an idea. General Kethron pulled up displays showing human insurgency tactics from various historical periods. Your species has developed techniques for turning every civilian into a potential combatant. Roads, buildings, and even children can become weapons against occupying forces. Amy watched footage of improvised explosive devices and booby traps that had been used throughout human history. The aliens were clearly disturbed by humanity's creativity when it came to asymmetric warfare. Most species limit military resistance to designated combat units. Commander Zarathal showed Amy records from previous integrations where organized armies had fought briefly before surrendering. Civilian populations typically cooperate with occupation forces once their military protection is eliminated, but humans blur the line between soldiers and civilians during desperate situations. Amy thought about the French resistance and similar movements throughout history. When our organized military fails, we continue fighting as individuals and small groups. Dr. Nixara's glowing patterns were pulsing rapidly, now indicating what Amy interpreted as severe agitation. You are describing a species that could potentially turn an entire planet into a combat zone. Every human settlement could become a center of resistance activity. The military analysts began discussing human tactics among themselves in their own language. Amy could not understand their words, but their body language suggested they were deeply concerned about something they had discovered. General Kethron returned his attention to Amy with obvious reluctance. We have also found evidence that your species has developed weapons capable of rendering your own planet uninhabitable. These devices could be used to deny resources to occupation forces. Amy realized the aliens had discovered humanity's nuclear weapons and were beginning to understand their strategic implications. Most species probably did not have the technology to destroy their own worlds, even if they wanted to. Would humans really destroy their own planet, rather than accept integration into our coalition? Commander Zaratho asked the question that Amy could see had been bothering all of them. Amy thought carefully before answering. She wanted to be honest, but also needed to help the aliens understand the full implications of their invasion plans. Humans have come close to nuclear war several times by accident. Amy watched the aliens' faces as she delivered this information. We have built enough weapons to sterilize our planet multiple times over, and sometimes our leaders have considered using them. Dr. Nixera pulled up data about Earth's nuclear arsenals and missile defense systems. Your species maintains weapons that could eliminate all life on your planet within hours. No previous integrated world has possessed such destructive capability. The room fell silent as the aliens processed this information. Amy could see them beginning to understand that invading Earth might trigger a response that would destroy everything they hoped to gain. We have always assumed that species would choose survival over destruction. General Kethron spoke slowly, as if he was working through a difficult problem. But your psychological profile suggests humans might choose mutual annihilation rather than accept occupation. Amy nodded grimly. Humans have a concept called scorched earth tactics. If we cannot keep something from our enemies, we destroy it so they cannot benefit from capturing it either. Commander Zarathal walked to the window showing Earth, and stared at the blue planet for a long time before speaking. You are telling us that invasion might result in the complete destruction of your world, and everyone on it, including our own forces. Amy joined her at the window, and looked down at her home planet. I am telling you that humans are unpredictable. When we are desperate, we might surprise you in ways that would be very bad for everyone involved. The aliens continued their discussion in their own language, while Amy watched Earth slowly rotating below them. She had succeeded in making them understand that humanity might not follow their carefully planned integration timeline. Now she could only hope that fear of human unpredictability would be enough to save her planet from invasion. Amy spent the fourth day alone in her room, watching Earth through the window, while alien voices echoed through the corridors outside. She could hear urgent conversations in the Valkyrie language, and the sound of many footsteps as crew members hurried between different sections of the ship. The door chimed and Dr. Nixera entered, looking more agitated than Amy had ever seen her. The alien's glowing patterns were shifting rapidly between different colors, and her forearms moved nervously as she sat down across from Amy. Commander Zarathal has called an emergency session of the Integration Planning Committee. Dr. Nick spoke quietly as if she was sharing classified information. Your explanations about human psychology have created significant concern among our leadership. Amy felt a spark of hope at these words, but tried not to let her excitement show. She needed to continue playing her role as a cooperative prisoner, while encouraging the aliens to reconsider their invasion plans. What kind of concerns? Amy kept her voice neutral while watching Dr. Nixera's emotional display patterns. We have spent the last day reviewing all our intelligence about Earth in light of what you have told us about human nature. Dr. Nixera activated her device, and the walls filled with data charts and analysis reports. The results are deeply troubling. Amy watched as the displays showed human internet activity and social media posts that the aliens had intercepted during their months of observation. She was amazed by how much information they had gathered about Earth's population. Your species has an unusual fascination with fictional stories about resistance against alien invasion. Dr. Nixera highlighted thousands of movies, books, and games that featured humans fighting against technologically superior enemies. This suggests a cultural preparation for exactly the scenario we are planning. Amy almost smiled as she realized the aliens had discovered science fiction and were taking it as evidence of human military planning. Every alien invasion movie and video game had apparently convinced them that humans were preparing for interstellar war. We have also found extensive online discussions about survival tactics and guerrilla warfare techniques. Commanders entered the room, followed by General Catherine and the other military analysts. These conversations treat asymmetric conflict as entertainment rather than serious. Military planning. Amy watched as the aliens displayed forum posts and chat logs where humans discussed zombie apocalypse scenarios and survival strategies. The Valkyrie seemed disturbed by humanity's casual interest in civilizational collapse. Your children play games that simulate fighting against impossible odds. General Catherine showed Amy footage of kids playing with toy soldiers in video games, featuring human resistance movements. This suggests your entire population is psychologically conditioned for prolonged resistance. Amy realized the aliens had misinterpreted human entertainment as preparation for actual war. They did not understand that humans enjoyed fictional conflict precisely because it was safe and controlled, unlike real violence. Perhaps most disturbing is your species' apparent belief that death in combat is preferable to peaceful surrender. Dr. Nixera pulled up quotes from human literature and philosophy about honor and sacrifice. These values are completely alien to every other species we have encountered. Commander Zarathal moved to the window overlooking Earth, and gestured toward the blue planet with obvious frustration. We have built our integration strategy on the assumption that intelligent species prioritize survival above all other considerations, but humans seem to prioritize abstract concepts like freedom and dignity over simple biological survival. General Kethron reviewed his notes while speaking. This makes your species completely unpredictable in combat situations. Amy decided this was the moment to push the aliens toward the conclusion she had been hoping they would reach. She stood up and joined Commander Zarathal at the window overlooking her home world. You asked me yesterday if humans would really destroy our own planet rather than accept occupation. Amy spoke quietly while staring down at Earth. I need to tell you something that might help you understand my species better. The aliens all focused their attention on Amy as she continued speaking. Humans have nearly destroyed our world by accident several times. We have come within minutes of nuclear war because of computer glitches and communication failures. Dr. Nixara's glowing patterns shifted to what Amy now recognized as extreme agitation. You are saying that your species might trigger planetary destruction without even intending to do so. Amy nodded grimly. If your fleet appears suddenly and begins attacking our city's human leaders, might assume we are facing extinction. They could launch nuclear weapons before they even understand what is happening. General Kethron pulled up displays showing Earth's nuclear command and control systems. Your military forces are designed for rapid response to existential threats. Integration procedures could easily be mistaken for an attempt at complete annihilation. Commander Zarathal turned away from the window to face her fellow officers. We have always assumed that superior technology would prevent significant resistance during integration operations. But humans might choose mutual destruction rather than accept occupation. The room fell silent as the aliens processed the implications of what Amy had told them. She could see them beginning to understand that invading Earth might result in the destruction of everything they hoped to gain. Even if we could prevent nuclear escalation, the occupation phase could last for decades. Dr. Nixara reviewed her behavioral analysis reports. Human resistance movements have historically continued fighting for generations after formal military defeat. Amy sensed that the aliens were close to abandoning their invasion plans, but needed one final push to make them reconsider. Completely. She decided to be completely honest about human nature rather than continuing to hedge her answers. There is something else you need to understand about my species. Amy waited until all the aliens were looking at her before continuing. Humans get more dangerous when we are desperate, not less dangerous. General Catherine leaned forward with obvious interest. Explain what you mean by more dangerous. When humans face extinction, we stop following normal moral and legal restraints. Amy tried to help the aliens understand the concept of total war. We will use any weapon and target any enemy asset, including civilian populations, if that is what survival requires. Commander Zarathal exchanged glances with her officers before asking the question Amy could see had been bothering them. Are you saying that humans would target non-combatant members of occupation forces? Amy nodded slowly. In a desperate situation, humans would consider every member of your species to be a legitimate target regardless of their actual role in the invasion. Your scientists and medical personnel would be just as much at risk as your soldiers. Dr. Nick made rapid notes, while her emotional patterns shifted through what Amy interpreted as fear and dismay. This level of total resistance has never been encountered in any previous integration operation. The aliens spent several minutes discussing the situation among themselves in their own language. Amy could not understand their words, but their body language suggested they were reaching a consensus about something important. Commander Zarathal finally turned back to Amy with what looked like resignation in her strange eyes. We need to ask you one final question, and we require complete honesty in your response. Amy nodded and waited for what she suspected would be the most important question of the entire interrogation. If the Velkari coalition withdraws its fleet, and abandons all plans for Earth's integration, would your species leave us alone? Commander Zarathal spoke slowly, as if she was considering each word carefully. Amy thought about how to answer this question in a way that would reassure the aliens without making promises she could not keep. She decided that complete honesty was the best approach. Humans explore space because we are curious about what is out there. Amy gestured toward the stars visible beyond Earth. If you leave us alone, we will probably try to find you eventually, but it would be for peaceful contact, not conquest. Dr. Nixara reviewed her notes one final time before speaking. Based on our analysis, human expansion into space will be driven by scientific curiosity rather than territorial ambition. Your species lacks the organizational structure necessary for interstellar conquest. General Kethron nodded agreement. Human political systems are too chaotic and competitive to support the kind of coordinated expansion that would threaten the coalition. Commander Zarathal made what Amy interpreted as a decision gesture with all four of her arms. We will recommend to Coalition Command that Earth be classified as unsuitable for integration and placed under long-term observation rather than occupation. Amy felt her knees go weak with relief as she realized the aliens had decided to abandon their invasion plans. Humanity would remain free to develop on its own terms, without interference from the Valkyrie coalition. The next morning, Amy found herself aboard a small escape pod heading toward Earth. Commander Zarathol had personally escorted her to the launch bay and provided her with a communication device containing a message for human leaders. Your species is too dangerous to conquer and too interesting to destroy, Commander Zarathol had said as Amy prepared to leave the alien ship. We will watch your development with great interest from a safe distance. Amy's pod was picked up by Earth Defense Forces 6 hours after launch. Her debriefing took 3 days as military intelligence tried to understand everything she had learned about alien technology and intentions. When Amy finally returned to her family, she carried with her the knowledge that humanity had been saved, not by superior weapons or brilliant strategy, but by the simple fact that humans were too crazy to predict and too stubborn to control. The official report classified the encounter as a first contact event that had been resolved through diplomatic channels. Amy never told anyone outside the military that Earth had come within days of invasion by aliens, who had conquered 47 other worlds. She did tell her younger sister that sometimes being a little bit crazy was exactly the right way to deal with bullies who thought they were smarter than everyone else.